Sürdürülebilirlik, iklim krizi, yeni ekonomik düzen konusunda şimdi keynote speaker'ımızla bir bağlantı gerçekleştireceğiz. Konuk konuşmacımız Birleşmiş Milletler Sürdürülebilir Kalkınma Çözümler Ağı Başkanı, Columbia Üniversitesi Sürdürülebilir Kalkınma Merkezi Direktörü Sayın Profesör Jeffrey Sachs, çevrim içi bağlantı aracılığıyla bizimle birlikte kendisi ve kendisine bir günaydın demek istiyoruz. Professor Sachs, good morning. Good morning. I have to say good morning.
Good afternoon to you.
Very
good
early,
to be with you.
Early in the morning down there. So it's an honor to have you here in our Congress, and we would like to hear what you said. So the stage is yours.
Thank you very much.
What
a pleasure and honor it is for me to be with the Istanbul Industrial Chamber and have the chance to discuss with you the very complicated situation that we are in globally, in the economy, in geopolitics, in environmental crisis. We have really an overload of complex issues, and Turkey is so important and strategic in finding a way out of all of these challenges that I'm really honored and delighted to share some ideas with you. And I am intent on being in Istanbul soon. So I'm hoping that COVID and travel enables us to be moving around better so that early in 2022 I can come visit and see friends and colleagues in the business sector and, of course, in the university sector and in government. We have two phenomenally complex issues in front of us right now. The very short-term crisis of COVID and all of the disruptions that this is causing, and the long-term transformations that are required of our society. While COVID is in this still intense phase, it is very hard to think about the long term, but it is extremely important as well to deal with the long term. Well, on the short term, I think what we can say is that almost 2 years into this pandemic, we are far from having solved this problem. And in a way, I think the global cooperation has been far too small for what is obviously a completely globalized phenomenon. And the Omicron variant that is now the object of global concern and is spreading dramatically fast is just another reminder that this crisis will not be over until we have a comprehensive global solution to COVID. And that means a global strategy of public health control based on universal immunization and best practices of national and regional efforts at stopping the pandemic. I won't say too much more about this, except to say that we have failed in the global cooperation. We've had far too much geopolitical tension and far too little cooperation at the global level. The Omicron variant seems to have arisen in Africa, although nobody is absolutely sure. But we know that the immunization coverage in Africa, on average, is still under 7% of the African population because the vaccine doses were kept for the United States and Europe, and we did not make a global strategy that is at all accurate and serious for this pandemic. We also saw all of the dangers which continue, by the way, with the U.S.-China tensions, because when the U.S. and China are having this kind of tension, they are not cooperating, and the international institutions like the World Health Organization can hardly function properly because UN organizations depend on the support of the powerful member states. And when we have geopolitical tensions, the UN does not function properly. And when the UN agencies don't function properly, we don't have proper global plans. So we're still in the midst of harsh short-term macroeconomic upheaval. This is obviously part of Turkey's immediate crisis right now, while Turkey is facing many reasons for this economic crisis that you're living through with the steep depreciation of the currency. One part of this is no doubt the instability of the global economy and the fact that macroeconomic operations are impeded everywhere in the world because we have no clarity about recovery from this massive disruption. Now, at the same time, in the midst of COVID, we had a tremendous economic challenge in front of us that would have been a major global crisis even without the pandemic. And that is the crisis of environmental catastrophe that is rising and that, like COVID, requires global cooperation and more decisive action than we have faced. Everybody knows, and especially after several weeks of the COP26 conference, that the world still has not found an effective approach to addressing the multiple environmental crises that are building worldwide, starting with the climate change crisis, which requires a massive transformation of our energy systems in a short period of time, including the shocks to our ecosystems, our water cycles, our river systems, the massive pollution of major regions of the world, like the Black Sea itself and like the Black Sea region, the massive air pollution, the loss of biodiversity, the destruction of forest regions all over the world. Even before COP26, we were facing the need for a deep and major transformation of how the world economy functions in order to head off the rising inequalities and the intensifying environmental crises that were underway. Then COVID came on top of all of these multiple crises, and the geopolitical tensions have come on top of that. So I find the situation today in world policymaking as difficult as at any time that we have seen in decades. And the lack of direction and the lack of sound leadership, including, unfortunately, from the United States, remains a major obstacle for us getting out of this crisis. What should we be doing? What we need to be doing now, in addition to the control of the pandemic itself through a worldwide coordinated system of immunization and precautionary public health measures, is a transformation of the world economy based on the principles of sustainable development. those mean that we need a transformation of our economy for environmental sustainability and more social justice, so that we combine the economic progress that we are aiming for with a safer physical environment and more social inclusion. And that is, of course, a tall order. It means a higher quality of economic recovery from a normal kind of rebound from COVID itself. We need transformation, not just recovery. And that transformation is summarized, I think, in being inclusive, green, and digital. Inclusive meaning that our governments are taking more actions to ensure that the hard-hit parts of society are able to secure an economic foothold in the economy. The environmental, of course, and green means that we are attending to these multiple crises of energy systems, sustainable land use, and sustainable water use. And the digital means that we are taking advantage of the one major technological breakthrough that gives us tools for rebuilding in a better way. And that is, of course, the use of advanced digital technologies to improve the performance of all parts of our economy at the national and global level. So when I think about the post-COVID period, I'm analyzing whether governments are taking appropriate steps for the green, digital, and inclusive recovery. And let me address that for three countries. First, for the United States, second, for the European Union, and third, for Turkey itself. In the US, we're trying in the Biden administration to have some approach to this green, digital, and inclusive recovery. But I would say it's very shaky. Trump, of course, was not aligned in any manner with this agenda. Trump himself and his administration was absolutely abusive on the question of green transformation, because his administration represented the oil, gas, and coal industry of the United States, and so rejected the entire premise of a green recovery. And the administration also rejected the premise of an inclusive recovery because it was oriented towards tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans and for the corporate sector. So inequality rose, pollution rose, and we had no direction in the United States towards sustainable development. President Biden came into office with the intention of changing direction. But I can say that as of this moment, it's proving to be a very difficult political challenge for the Biden administration. As you know, in the United States system, the president does not have an effective working majority in the Congress. He does not even have effective control over many members of his own political party. And so while the administration is trying to pass legislation based on sustainable development, based on increasing taxation on the wealthy in order to fund more social programs and to fund more green investments, so far, this legislation has been stuck in the US Congress. something may pass perhaps in the coming weeks, but it will be a rather modest package of measures. The Biden administration is weak. It is not really in a politically dominant position, and it faces the prospect of losing control of one or both houses of the U.S. Congress at the election next November, in November 2022. Of course, this is a lot of speculation, but it means, for the sake of analysis, that the United States political system remains very much divided, and the U.S. economy remains without clear direction because of the political divisions that continue in the U.S. In Europe, the situation is more clear and, in my view, more positive, and also, of course, extremely important for Turkey in view of Turkey's very deep economic relations with the European Union. The main fact of the European Union, of course, is the adoption of the European Green Deal and the Recovery and Resilience Fund of Europe to help fund the European Green Deal. This, to my mind, is enormously significant for Europe and for Turkey, for that matter, because the European Green Deal is a comprehensive program to reorient the European economy to sustainable development. And the European Green Deal, as you know well, aims at almost every dimension that I've spoken of in terms of transformation. It is a program of decarbonizing the energy system with the 55% reduction of emissions by 2030 and net zero emissions aimed for in Europe by 2050. It is a program of reducing pollution significantly through the principles of circular economy. It is a program aiming at sustainable land use in the so-called European Farm to Fork program. It is a program of digitalization in Europe to use the digital technologies more widely. And it is a program of attempting at more regional inclusion through a significant level of funding at the European-wide level, so more redistribution within the European system. My view is that this is a smart, consistent, and quite bold policy, which is rather impressive under current circumstances and, of course, given the complexities of management within 27 countries with very disparate interests. Well, if I turn to Turkey, I would say that all of these issues are paramount for Turkey as a major exporting country and as a country that is at the cusp of advanced technologies, but is also not aligned currently with a clear sustainable development trajectory. So Turkey, of course, just before COP26, ratified the Paris Agreement, one of the last countries to do so, and the Turkish government, thankfully, announced a plan for, or not, I shouldn't say a plan, a goal for decarbonization of Turkey around mid-century. But there still is no plan. There still is no clear strategy. And I would say there is, from what I can see, no clear orientation towards major digital transformation of the Turkish economy as well. So From my point of view, the major challenge that Turkey faces is to think strategically for the longer term, which is extremely difficult with the very short-term crises that Turkey is facing economically at the moment. But I believe that the only way out, even of the short-term macroeconomic crises, is more clarity on the long-term strategy. Why is Turkey in the midst of this short-term macroeconomic crisis and sharp depreciation of the currency and so forth? I believe that to an important extent, actually, it is truly geopolitical. Of course, it also reflects domestic monetary policy and all of the tensions in short-term macroeconomic governance. But if you look at the origins of Turkey's immediate crisis, they really do go back several years to the regional tensions, the more geopolitical issues, and the downgrading of Turkey's credit rating that occurred 5 years ago. And since Turkey lost its investment grade rating back in 2016, the economy has suffered the instability of more unreliable financial relations with the international capital markets, higher interest rates paid by Turkey for international borrowing, more unstable financial linkages in interbank loans, loss of access to international capital markets. And during this process of worsening credit ratings, of course, Turkey's geopolitical tensions with the European Union, with the United States, and so forth have also become more complex and more difficult. And this has exacerbated the short-term economic crisis, but it also makes more difficult the long-term strategic direction for the economy. And that, of course, is another factor in amplifying the credit risk and the low bond ratings and all of the difficulties that Turkey finds itself in right now. My own recommendations in this regard are that good geopolitical relations are central for economic transformation. And part of this is, of course, out of Turkey's control, because not for the first time, Turkey finds itself in the middle of multiple geopolitical tensions. That seems to be your place in the world, perhaps the most complicated bridge in the world between Europe and Asia and every imaginable tension that can arise. But the way forward, to my mind, is long-term strategic direction based on sustainable development and based on regional cooperation and global cooperation of Turkey with all major partners, with the European Union, with China, with Russia, and the United States. That's not easy when the United States is creating more and more tension, unwisely, I believe, but creating more tension with Russia, creating more tension with China. And given that, Turkey finds itself, as always, somewhat in the middle of all of these tensions. But let me try to be a little bit more specific in what I have in mind. Turkey needs a plan for sustainable development. It needs a plan for green, digital transformation. And to my mind, that plan must be a plan that is regionally integrated and regionally smart. In other words, Turkey really needs to align with the European Green Deal. Turkey needs to not only maintain its access and competitiveness in the European economy, but also to be an effective bridge between Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, including China, in this process. And that requires investments that are building strong interconnections between the Eastern Mediterranean, Europe, the Black Sea region, and indeed connectivity with China as well under the Belt and Road Initiative. And so I think while it is not easy to accomplish, Turkey's strategy, to my mind, for economic recovery and transformation should be built on a partnership of Turkey with the European Union Green Deal, so that Turkey has its own Green Deal that is harmonized with Europe and with the Eastern Mediterranean, and that is also connected with the Belt and Road Initiative and with the building of green and sustainable infrastructure across Eurasia. Because whether it is Turkey's Middle Corridor or China's Belt and Road Initiative or Europe's new Global Gateway Initiative, all of these are strategies to build a green and digital infrastructure for the long-term transformations needed in Eurasia. And Turkey is ideally placed from a geographic point of view to be a major hub of this long-term transformation across Eurasia. But it requires geopolitical stability and a cooperative approach rather than the tensions that are so paramount and rising globally. At a geopolitical level, I would hope that Turkey could be a stabilizing country and also a good friend of the United States to tell the U.S. to not enter a Cold War with China or a Cold War with Russia, but actually aim to be cooperative as well. I view the U.S. provocations vis-a-vis Russia and China to be extremely dangerous, actually, but also very problematic from Turkey's point of view, because what we need more than ever globally is a cooperative investment approach that enables the transformation of industry, the transformation of the energy sector, and the digitalization of our economies so that we can achieve sustainable development. One final point that I want to emphasize, a very long-term point, but perhaps the most fundamental point. And that is that all successful transformation of our economies depends on the solidity of education and the quality of science, technology, and the research and innovation environment in a country. The ultimate source of strength for Turkey, of course, are the Turkish people. And the ultimate source of strength for the future of the Turkish economy are Turkey's young people. And that means that the quality of education in Turkey, from primary and secondary level up through the university system, is the paramount long-term investment for the country. When I watch what's happening in the United States, and as you could hear, I'm not very happy with what's happening in the United States. Probably the deepest underlying reason for America's failures now and for our political divisions are the shortcomings of our education system, because we have left much of America poorly educated, and poorly educated people don't have a place in the economy that is satisfactory, and they express their grievances by voting for horrible politicians like Donald Trump, and we end up with this terrible political division that we're in. Ultimately, it's a matter of an educational crisis, in my opinion. Well, to avoid that crisis, what we need are commitments of all countries to educational excellence for all and a strong science support at the university level and at the innovation level. That, to put it in another way, is the ultimate source of China's success in the last 40 years. A dramatic rise of the quality of schooling, education levels, and technological innovation. So in the context of this long-term transformation, my main advice, and I'll close on this point, is first to develop long-term strategic, sustainable development plans. Without that, I'm afraid all of our economies will be adrift. So Turkey needs the plans now to back up the commitment to decarbonization. And those plans need to include the zero carbon energy systems, the digitalization of the Turkish economy, and the sustainable use of Turkey's great ecosystems, its forest regions, its great rivers, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean basin. So the first is long-term plans. The second is regional cooperation. Reduce the tensions, become aligned with the European Green Deal, create a framework for the Eastern Mediterranean region for sustainable development, in which Turkey plays a leading role, helping to bridge the Eastern Mediterranean, the Middle East, and Europe, and play a globally bridging role with good relations with the European Union, China, Russia, and the United States, because Turkey will thrive based on good relations with all of the major powers. And all of those good relations would be the underpinning of strong investments in the future economy. And finally, build, support, and cherish the education system of Turkey. You have superb universities. I am profoundly honored to have the network that I helped to lead for the UN, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, strongly represented in Turkey's excellent universities. Build them, have strong industry university relations, because that will support the business sector to reach advances of technology. And ultimately, the strong education base will be the key for Turkey's competitiveness, its sustainable development, and its well-being in the future. So thank you very much for letting me make these brief remarks. We need to find ways to lower tensions and get our economies working again. Let's end this terrible pandemic so that we can see each other face to face in a more regular way. And let's proceed together with Turkey's leadership role in the transformation to global sustainable development. Thank you very much.